Hello. Welcome to vlog number 12. No, 11. 12. This one is about moving through my grief about my brother. So last week I shared that I needed to take a step back and just be and process my brother's death. Um, I was struggling and I lost him years ago to the disease. I don't really think that he was really with us anymore. But I always had this bit of hope that maybe he'd come back and that he would, give up the alcohol and everything. And that didn't happen. And then I had to go through all the motions of taking care of everything. I would have in the past just gone and done all X, Y, and Z and not really felt anything. I would have stuffed it down in there. And then what happens with grief is if we stuff it, it comes out later on in a not so good way sometimes. And so I had to, and now I write about grief, I write about signs of the afterlife, but I also know that grief is a form of love. And I had to fully embrace that love and that part of me that was grieving for my brother, for my lot, for him who has so lost in this world. And so I dove in deep the past few weeks, and it's still a little bit right there on the surface. But I wanted to share this. And I have to tell you that it's taken me a week to get up my nerve to even write something. I'm, you know, definitely focused on some notes here because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to confront it full on. But I'm here with you now to show you what I went through so that maybe if you're going through grief, which we all are at certain points, that maybe something that I say might help you. So I know that the 5 stages of grief were meant for someone who is about to face their own death. Actually, I can see signs of it in my brother's journal that I found, where he is like kind of contemplating bargaining with God, like, hey, I'm going to try to get myself together. Can I, do this? And so I don't get stuck in those 5 stages of grief anymore. I don't worry about my anger. I don't worry about bargaining because there's nothing to bargain for. My brother's gone. There's nothing I can do. Bargaining is for when, like, if I'm facing my own death, like I'm asking God to please let me live because I want to live some, longer. So I don't get hung up in those. There are 2 stages that are from a different model, not Kubler-Ross's, and they are staying connected to your loved one and living on with their legacy. So my brother was very confused mentally. He had such a big heart, but I also know that he was super sensitive. And so that's what fuels me for all the work that I do now. Peace, love, and Reiki help us understand ourselves better. So um, I've learned some other things along my way, including remembering what I loved about the person and also looking for signs. So I knew that I had been experiencing anticipatory grief. So I knew the phone call about my brother would eventually come, but I just didn't know when. He had been warned by the doctors for years and that his liver was failing from all of his drinking. The guy seriously seemed to have 9 lives. His body had some way to keep surviving even though his organs were shutting down. So personally speaking, I could have been in his shoes. I am hitting in the spring 25 years of being sober. It was the best decision of my life. It is a black and white decision for me. There's no question in my mind that I don't need alcohol in order to live a full and happy life. So, if you're contemplating, like, should I stop drinking? Should I not? Do it. It's not necessarily, you don't even have to say that you're an alcoholic. It's just that alcohol you just don't like, and that you don't want to spend your time like that. It's not good for you. It's depressant. I used to think it was confidence in a bottle. And now I know that it wasn't confidence in a bottle. And so I am so thankful and grateful that I was able to give this up years ago so that I didn't end up in my brother's shoes just like him. The last time I saw my brother was in the hospital almost a year and a half ago. He was not the person I grew up with. His brain was confused and his mind was all mixed up. But I was there for him. I sat with him. I chatted with him for almost 2 hours. And then when I got up to leave and I was standing in the doorway, he looked at me and said, "Can I have a hug?" And I said, "Yes, Brian, you may have a hug." And I went and I gave my brother a hug. And I knew at the time, every time that I saw him, it could be my last time seeing him because he was really bad. So I had that good memory to hang on to for him. Every time that I saw him, I always told him I loved him. I separated out the disease from him. And I made sure that he understood that no matter what happened, that I loved him. So I know that him just asking me for that hug was his way of saying, "I know you love me, sis. I know it." And so I treasure that memory. So it felt normal to lose my parents, a natural flow of life. It's expected. Losing a brother or a sibling was something that I was expecting, but in a different way. This was the final loss after years of losing him to the disease. It'll still hits hard than I thought it was going to. And the way it showed up actually surprised me. What I am now understanding about grief is that it brings all the other times of grief with it. It's sort of like a domino effect. His death sent me back in time, and the dominoes kept piling and falling one by one. For instance, it brought back memories of my parents. It brought back memories of people that we were connected to, our family connections, our family friends. And then it reminded me of, like, we've lost their father, or they've lost one of their siblings. It brought back all of those memories of losing other people. I posted about my brother's death on Facebook, and I felt the love from others with their comments. Things like, "I'm so sorry, Monica," or "thinking of you." These were very much appreciated. But there was also something else that happened. People started sharing stories about my brother before the disease took him. And that's what opened up the water gates for my eyes. Like, I was just like blown away. Like, people were really remembering for him for who he was. And that meant a lot to me. But it also triggered like all this feeling kept coming up. And I was just like, oh my God, they do remember him. They know who he was before the disease got him. It also brought up all of, the grief for my parents that I felt. So this was their kid, right? Like, and even though they aren't here anymore, I felt their grief inside me because I can't imagine losing a child. And I know that some of you out there watching and listening have experienced that. So even though my parents are, gone into the spirit world, I felt their grief for losing their son. because they knew that this could happen. They struggled and they tried to help him. And we tried to help him. I tried to help him so many times. And so through that grief, I tried to think of like, what would my parents want for his service? What would my parents want me to do in this situation? And so that's what kind of fueled me for his service and to try to think of that. I know that my brother wasn't my child, but I thought a lot about what my parents would want for their son. Then the other comments started coming through. They were posts sharing who my brother was. They were filled with love, and I know everything I have read about grief is that grief is just about love. It's the love we had for those who are gone that we feel so deeply. Then the grief started getting stuck in my body. I knew it because I knew that our emotions can make us ill, and this was no different. The grief got stuck in my lungs, right where we hold all of our grief. I got a really bad cold, and then I just couldn't seem to breathe. It literally took the breath out of me. And if you think about that shock when you first find out somebody's dead, even if you're expecting it, like I was expecting my brother, but that initial, like it takes your breath away. So I got a cold and then I just couldn't seem to breathe. So then the coughing started. The coughing then gave me what I called a wraparound headache. It started about here, wrapped right around. And I had gently taken my grief and tried to set it over here to sit next to me instead of moving through it. I spoke to it and said, I have a busy week this week. Would you please step aside so that I can follow through on my commitments? I had a busy week teaching some college classes that I teach. I had a busy week. I was teaching some Reiki, and I asked my grief to sit over here. It doesn't it doesn't like to step aside. So my headache continued to get worse. This wraparound headache. That's all I can feel like this headband whoosh, going around and around. And I knew I needed help to be able to work through the physical symptoms. I set up an appointment for acupuncture. I told her my symptoms. I'm having trouble breathing. I'm still coughing. I still get this lump in my throat. But I also shared the emotional symptoms. I said, my brother died and he was an alcoholic. And she just looked at me and said, oh, well, we hold grief in our lungs. And your wraparound headache shows that you can't wrap your head around your brother's situation. And I was just like, oh, yikes. I thought I had worked through some of my grief and was doing well. But this was another whole layer. I and many others had always had a glimmer of hope that my brother would be able to beat the need for a drink. I had always hoped that he would be able to set his priorities to be able to be there for his kids, his wives, but he just couldn't. And now it was the time for the final goodbye. At first, I cried over him. Then I cried over losing both of my parents. Then I cried when all the good memories came up. I let those tears flow like water in a fast moving stream. They flowed even more as I read the comments people sent to me, either on Facebook or private messages. People remembered my brother like I remembered him, with a big heart and always wanting to be helpful of others. So after my acupuncture appointment, after crying, after processing the paperwork I needed to do, this is what I did next. I moved my body. Grief literally gets stuck in our body and we have to move it out with movement. When animals are in the wild, scientists have studied this, and they go through a stressful situation, they don't hold on to their trauma. But it's because right after the stressful situation, they shake. So if you've ever heard or seen an animal like go into like shock and start shaking and almost like they're having a seizure, That's their way of moving out that energy, that stressful energy, because they're always trying to survive, right? Which is what we're trying to do too. It's just that our survival is different than living out in the wild. So I had to, make sure that I was literally shaking my body some way. So one of the first things that I did was I did go for a walk in the woods. I also do Kundalini yoga and I also do Reiki. So the walk in the woods actually was kind of funny. I went in the walk in the woods and I was about to we had just had a snowstorm and there was this branch kind of leaning down that I had to kind of duck under. And I was like, I wonder if my brother's gonna send me any signs. And then right instantly, I kid you not, I wrote about this in my newsletter last week. I got hit with a snowball right about here. Or what actually this wasn't a snowball. It was the snow dropping from the trees, but it hit me right here. And I knew instantly that the humor from my brother was coming through. My brother always picked on people, his little sister, me included. And I was like, you just pegged a snowball at me, didn't you? And I could hear his laugh so loud. Like I can just hear it. He is just laughing, laughing, laughing. And so I was just like, okay, I'll take it. So Kundalini yoga is a breath work too that I use. And um it's a more active yoga practice and it uses a lot of breath work while you're doing the yoga. And so it pumps in the oxygen into my body by doing the breath work with the yoga moves. And so that's what I needed to fill my lungs with extra oxygen. I had to keep pumping it because that muscle is holding on to my grief. And so the more that I can pump it, the more that I can work through my grief. And so I've been doing a lot of Kundalini yoga lately, and even just stopping and saying, like, whew, like, I'm okay. I'm okay. And just talking to myself, putting my hands over my heart, they all helped. I also did Reiki on my head. So just holding my hands on my head and coming to terms with that wrap around feeling. So she said, you can't wrap your head around your brother. So, yeah, like I know that his soul came to this lifetime in order to learn some lessons. And so he had to learn his lessons. And I believe now that he's in the spirit world, he understands his mistakes, he understands um his soul lessons, and I believe that he's sending pure love back to those of us that knew him. So if you knew anybody that's passed and you had trouble with them here, just know that they're okay now. There's a lot of religious programming. I am religious, I'm also spiritual, but I don't believe in some of the religious teachings that they teach us about good and bad. And that, if you didn't do good in this lifetime, then you're going to go to hell. I don't necessarily engage in that. I engage in an all loving, unconditional love from divine, from wherever that you want to say that it's coming from. But I truly believe in that. And so I believe that my brother is being held by God, by divine love, whatever that you want to call it. And I believe that he is reunited with my parents, with my grandparents, with everybody that was in my family. So those are some things that I have done to work through my grief. And then I was like, oh, dang, I think I gotta do some writing. So, the universe likes to have fun with us, right? So I created this journal, Your Journey with Grief, and it's a space to express yourself and keep the legacy of your loved one alive. And I was just like, "Oh, I don't want to write. Like, this is really hard." And so this is, last week's vlog, and then this week's, oh, sorry. Um, this week's vlog, just talking to you. It was hard. Like I didn't want to do it, but I also knew that I couldn't keep working in my job and my business if I didn't like model this and talk about what I'm going through. Because this is real. Like I am still kind of working through some of this stuff, and I know that I can for years. So I'm going to read a couple of things from this journal. First of all, there is a chapter about the 5 stages not being meant for people who are grieving. They were meant for someone who is facing their death. And there's more information in there about that. So in heaven, we can see you, we can feel you, we know your pain, your tears, but we feel no pain or tears ourselves. There are no bodies here, there is no age. The old who come are no different than the children. No one feels alone, no one is greater or smaller. We are all in the light. The light is grace, and we are part of the one great thing. By Mitch Albom from The First Phone Call from Heaven. This next one is Understanding Death as a Transition. I believe at our core we are all energy. Energy cannot be made, it cannot die. It can only be transformed. When we die, I believe our energy becomes free from the physical forms, our bodies, and transforms into spirit. As such, our loved one's energy is always with us and it's always around us. That is from Kathleen L., and she wrote the book Shattered Together, A Mother's Journey from Grief to Belief. So in this book, I give you also what's called a grief permission slip. You have every right to find your own way through grief, even if your way looks wildly different from that of others. There is no generic advice or timeline that you need to follow. No one has the right answers, no matter how wise they may be or how well versed in grief they are. By Monica Tenkate. I, Monica L. Morrissey, give you, the reader, permission to experience your grief in whatever way you would like. So then in the journal are different quotes and writing prompts. I do think that writing has really helped me with my grief. And I didn't plan to do that. I didn't even plan to write a single book. And now here I am talking to you all, and written 3 books about signs of the afterlife. I've written a book about, signs, or a card deck about heaven. I've written 2 journals, grief being one of them and Reiki another one. So that I wanted to go back to the energy it becomes free of our physical form. So a funny story that I told at the service that we just had a couple of days ago was we had my brother cremated, and I don't feel like that's him. That's just the leftover parts of his physical body. But I believe that he's here with us wherever we go. But when we were kids, I was, this jogged back a lot of memories for me. And I was like trying to remember the good times. And one of the memories that came up when I went to put his box into my car to bring to the service was, where was I going to put him? Was I going to put him in the front seat or the back seat? And I was like, do you know how many times him and I fought over that front seat of the car when we were kids? And I was like, dude, you're going in the back seat this time. And it was just a joke. It was just to be funny. And I was just like, you know what? If he's going to peg a snowball at me, then I'm going to still have some fun with him. So his humor lives on um, in those little moments. So this is a a quote from Squire Rushnell's book, When God Winks at You. The definition of coincidence found in the American Heritage Dictionary is a sequence of events that, although accidental, seems to have been planned or arranged. This definition, of course, begs the question, planned or arranged by whom? Most people answer, by God, that's who. Whatever you call the creative life force, it seems to be not just an architect of the past, but of the very minute by minute present of our lives. And one of the things that I encourage you to write about in this journal is thank you for the sign. I know it was you. And write about your signs because it does help our hearts heal. And not that healing, I don't want to be too like, I'll never heal from this. Nobody ever heals from grief. Like, let's get that over with. Like, it continues, and like the domino effect, every time one happens, it like literally sends me down this train of like thoughts about all the other people that I miss and love. So this one I feel is appropriate for today because the memory of my brother is what helps me inspire me to help more people, to help people understand what their brain is telling them and what they're working on. So you can either stand still and live in yesterday or step through the gates of possibility into the life you were truly meant to live by Brendan Bouchard. And he wrote the book, Life's Golden Ticket, a story about second chances. So the prompt that I have here is, I understand there is a reason I am still here and you aren't. I'm going to use your memory to, I'm going to use my brother's memory to help others understand grief more. I'm going to use my brother's memory to help people understand their brain more. I want to use my brother's memory to help me understand how sensitive people like him and myself can navigate this world in a different way and to take care of this energetic system that we have here, and that we don't have to numb it. We don't have to, um, turn away from it, that we can feel all of those emotions in a safe and natural way and work through them and understand how to do that. I don't know about you, but like I didn't understand how to work through my emotions, and it literally like piled up. And so now it's like all the dominoes of emotions are coming out. And I've worked through several different modalities to be able to help heal myself so that I can help heal others. So this book, it's available on Amazon if you'd rather have it in the book format. It is a free downloadable on my website. If you just go to monicaelmorrissey.com, you can hopefully find the link, and you can download it and print it off yourself. It's $10, online, or you can purchase it from me directly. But I do encourage you to put pen to paper because it does help your heart. Again, I don't want to use the word heal because that means like you're at the end. It will soothe it. It will help calm it. It will help you feel better. If you shake, do some, Kundalini yoga or something, movement of some sort, jump around. I don't care. Dance in the shower. I don't care. Just do something to move your body because it will help move through those emotions. Right. And of course, I'm all for Reiki, right? Peace, love, and Reiki. These shirts are available, and sweatshirts are available now for purchase at Intuitive Wellness. And I just thank you for anyone who listened this long. I appreciate you. Um, I hope that something in here that I said might help you if you're experiencing grief. Yeah, just let it out and reach out to me if I can help in any way. Thank you.